I've always been a huge Dragon Ball Z fan. Ever since I was a kid, I would rush home after school to watch Goku and the others battle against impossible foes. Out of all the villains, Freeza was the one that stuck with me the most. There was something about his cold, calculating nature that always gave me chills. A few weeks ago, while browsing through a small thrift store, I stumbled upon something strange. A Dragon Ball Z VHS tape I had never seen before. The cover was unsettling. It featured Freeza, but not like in the anime. His face was twisted, his eyes were too wide, and his grin stretched unnaturally across his face. There was no title, no branding, just Frieza's eerie expression staring back at me. Curious, I flipped the tape over. A small worn-out sticker was on the back, with a single word scribbled in black ink. Watch. I laughed nervously. It was probably some fan-made recording, maybe an old promotional tape. Still, something about it unsettled me. The cashier, an old man with sunken eyes, barely acknowledged me as I paid for it. When I got home, I dusted off my old VCR and slid the tape in. The screen flickered before a Dragon Ball Z episode began. At first it seemed normal. The opening played like usual, though the colors were slightly off, washed out, almost faded. But once the episode began, I noticed something strange. There was no music. The episode opened with the familiar scene of Namek's ruins, but it was dead silent. No background music, no wind, not even the sound of water. Just Goku and Freeza standing face to face. I recognized this fight immediately. It was when Freeza, in his final form, was battling Goku after he had transformed into a Super Saiyan. But then Goku didn't speak. Neither did Freeza. They just stood there, staring at each other. The silence dragged on for an uncomfortable amount of time. Then, Freeza did something strange. He turned his head, not towards Goku, but towards the screen, towards me. I felt my stomach twist. Then, Freeza grinned. It wasn't a smirk. It wasn't his usual cocky smile. This was wrong. His teeth were sharper than usual. His eyes, they weren't animated like normal. They looked real, like they were watching me. The screen flickered, and suddenly Freeza spoke, but not in Japanese, not even in English. He said my name. I ripped the VHS out of the player. My hands were shaking. That wasn't possible. It had to be some weird coincidence, right? But as I stared at the black VHS tape in my hands, I noticed something I hadn't before. The sticker on the back didn't just say, "Watch" anymore. Now, there was something else written beneath it. "You can't run." I sat there gripping the black VHS tape, my pulse pounding in my ears. You can't run. That wasn't there before. I was sure of it. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. I had been so absorbed in the creepy nature of the tape that my brain was just filling in the gaps. Yeah, that had to be it. Trying to shake off the unease, I shoved the tape into a drawer, slammed it shut, and went to bed. But sleep never came. I kept hearing things. Faint, whispering voices. At first, I thought it was just the wind outside my window. But the more I listened, the more I realized that wasn't it. The voices weren't coming from outside. They were inside my room. I turned on my bedside lamp, scanning the darkness. My room was empty. Everything looked normal. Then I noticed something. My TV was on. I was sure I had turned it off before bed, but there it was, glowing faintly in the darkness, displaying nothing but static. I swallowed hard, reaching for the remote to turn it off. And then the screen flickered. For just a second, I saw something in the static. A face. Freeza. His eyes locked onto mine, as if he could see me through the screen. And then, in that same cold, slithering voice from before, he whispered, "You should not have stopped watching." I nearly fell out of bed. I scrambled for the remote, frantically mashing the power button. The screen flickered again, this time showing something different. It wasn't static anymore. It was Namek, or what was left of it. The entire planet was in ruins, charred black, the sky a sickening shade of red. There were no characters on screen. No Goku, no Vegeta, just empty destruction. Then Frieza's voice returned. "You think this is a game?" I froze. "You think you can just turn me off?" I didn't move. I couldn't. My whole body was frozen in pure primal fear. Suddenly, the VCR turned itself on. The drawer where I had shoved the VHS slid open by itself. The tape, it was back in the player. The TV flickered one last time, and before I could do anything, the screen cut to black. Silence. Then, in the darkness, a final whisper. "You belong to me now." I wanted to believe it was all just a nightmare. That's what I told myself as I sat on the edge of my bed, my breath shallow, my hands shaking. I hadn't touched the VHS. I hadn't put it back in the player. Yet there it was, waiting. My TV screen was pitch black now, but the VCR was still running. The faint hum of the tape spinning filled the silence of my room. I had two choices. I could destroy the tape, snap it in half, burn it, do whatever it took to get rid of it. Or I could finish watching. My entire body screamed at me to throw it away, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Freeza had spoken to me. He knew my name. He had forced the tape back in. If I didn't play along, I didn't know what would happen. Taking a deep breath, I reached for the remote. My fingers trembled as I pressed play. The black screen flickered. I was back on Namek. But now, it wasn't just a ruined wasteland. There were bodies. Everywhere. The screen panned across the battlefield, showing Namekian corpses littering the ground, twisted, burned, unrecognizable. It was worse than anything I'd ever seen in the anime. The art style was the same, but something about it felt too real. Then, the camera slowly moved up, to reveal Freeza. He stood there, floating above the destruction, staring straight at me. For a long moment, he didn't speak. He just smiled. Then, in that smooth serpentine voice, he said, "You came back. Good." I felt a cold shiver crawl up my spine. I was beginning to think you lacked the will to fight. Fight? What the hell did he mean? Suddenly, the screen glitched. Static ripped through the audio, distorting Frieza's face for a split second. When the image returned, something was different. The camera had pulled back. And now, there was a character standing in front of Freeza. A character that wasn't supposed to be there. Me. Or at least, someone who looked exactly like me. Same hair, same clothes, same face. The character was standing in the middle of the ruined Namek, fists clenched, breathing hard, as if he had been fighting for a long time. "What?" I whispered out loud. On the screen, Freeza tilted his head, as if he had heard me. "Ah, so you see it now?" he purred. "This is your story after all." I stared in disbelief. How was this happening? Freeza floated closer to my in-game counterpart. He lifted a single finger, pointing it straight at me. "It's time for the final battle." The screen flickered again, and then I felt something grip my wrist. Not in the game, in real life. Something cold, something sharp. I gasped and jerked my arm away, stumbling back. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would burst out of my chest. I spun around, expecting to see someone standing behind me, but there was nothing. Just the dim glow of my TV. When I turned back to the screen, my character was gone. The battlefield was empty, except for Freeza, who was now looking directly at me and laughing. I couldn't move. Frieza's laughter echoed through my room, spilling out from the TV like a sick, twisted melody. His eyes, sharp and gleaming, never left mine. The screen glitched violently, distorting his face in unnatural ways. His grin stretched, too wide, his teeth too sharp. His voice warped, shifting from his usual smooth tone to something low, guttural. Monstrous! You still don't understand, do you? The static on the screen flashed, and for a split second, I saw something. Hands. Dozens of pale, twisted hands, reaching out from the static, clawing at the edges of the screen. I stumbled backward, knocking over my chair. My breathing was erratic, my mind screaming at me to turn the TV off, but I couldn't. The remote wouldn't work. The power button wouldn't work. No matter what I did, the tape kept playing. Then, the whispers started again. But this time, they were coming from behind me. I froze. A cold, creeping sensation slithered up my spine. Slowly, terrified of what I might see, I turned my head. There, in the dark corner of my room, something moved. At first, it was just a shadow, a shifting, writhing, mass of darkness. But then, 2 glowing red eyes appeared, and I knew it was him. Not on the TV, not trapped in the tape. Freeza was here. You should have never watched. His voice was a whisper in my ear, too close. I could feel his presence, his sickening energy, pressing against my skin. I ran. I didn't care where. I just ran. I bolted out of my room, down the hallway, my heart pounding like a war drum. The house felt wrong, stretched, distorted, as if the walls were bending inward. The hallway never ended. No matter how far I ran, my room was always just behind me. I was trapped. Why run? Freeza's voice purred. I spun around. He was standing. Right there. Not animated. Real. His skin was pale and glassy, like porcelain, reflecting the dim light. His tail flicked behind him, his grin stretching impossibly wide. He raised his finger. A small, burning light formed at the tip. The death beam. I'm bored of waiting, he said. Let's end this. The light flashed, and I felt a searing pain tear through my chest. I collapsed. I could hear him laughing. Faint. Distant. Then, darkness. I woke up gasping for air. The pain in my chest was gone, but the fear still clung to my skin like sweat. My room was silent. The TV was off. The VCR was gone. Had it been a dream? I sat up, my head spinning. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone to check the time. 3 a.m. A chill ran down my spine. Something felt wrong. My room looked the same, but at the same time, it didn't. The shadows were too deep. The air felt too heavy. Then I noticed it. The mirror. It was cracked, a jagged line running straight through the middle. I didn't own a cracked mirror. Slowly, cautiously, I stood up and walked toward it. My reflection moved with me, but something was off. My face looked paler. My eyes looked darker. And then it smiled. I didn't. I stumbled back, my heart hammering against my ribs. My reflection tilted its head, watching me like I was some kind of prey. Still think it was just a dream. The voice wasn't mine. It was his. I turned. Nothing. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection was gone. Instead, I saw Namek, ruined, burning, and standing in the middle of it was me, not my reflection. Me. I was in the screen now. I banged my fists against the glass, screaming, but no sound came out. Outside, in my room, I saw someone standing where I had been. Someone that looked exactly like me. They turned toward the TV, smirking. The screen flickered, then static, and I finally understood. I hadn't been watching Freeza's tape. He had been watching me, and now he had won.